Get him.
And
Then no, put him up. Put him up. Here we go. Oh.
Oh.
So yeah, we were watching the fight between the man and the kangaroo. Kangaroo versus black belt, according to CBS Miami. And we were kind of breaking it down on a technical level because there is a bit to be broken down. And I mean, dude, the lead right hook of the guy standing southpaw, it looked like that kangaroo had no idea how to deal with a southpaw fighter. I mean, dude, he just reared up, just hit a per. That was nice.
Yeah, that gets overwhelming as an orthodox fighter that first time against the southpaw.
By the way, the audio listeners are going to be so confused by what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, they won't be able to see the precision in what we're talking about.
Yeah, you guys got to check it out on YouTube when you guys have a chance.
You can take a few things from that
yeah.
black belt. This guy can strike too, all right? Let's get him on this next UFC card.
Let's get him on the podcast.
Podcast.
Any fighters that are watching, they could definitely get some tips from that guy, He should open up a gym. But,
yeah.
You guys didn't come to hear us talk about the Australian guy versus the kangaroo, but you guys did come to hear us talk about a different Australian guy. And UFC 315, I mean, let's just hop right into this main event, man, because we had a war between Jack Della Maddelena and Belal Muhammad for the welterweight title. Jack Della Maddelena wins it by unanimous decision, 248-47s and then 149-46. Arguably fight of the year, man. I mean, this one was just an absolute war. One of the better welterweight title fights since really the Usman Covington fights back in those days. And before that, obviously Robbie versus Rory, or Robbie versus Condit. Welterweights had some great title fights, and this was another one on that list, man. What did you think of it?
Yeah, man. So, originally this fight was well, obviously there was no late announcement, but this wasn't what the welterweight title fight was originally supposed to be for Belal Muhammad's first title defense. But obviously, for whatever reason, because it was a very smart and logical reason, obviously, on UFC's part to make Sean Brady fight Leon Edwards instead, and then put Jack Della Maddelena at number 5 and have him go for the title shot.
Also, after being out for a year too.
Oh yeah,
because he broke his arm in the Burns fight.
Dude, wow. I mean, we already knew was a very entertaining, exciting, and high level, just very active fighter when he's in the cage. There's little to no wasted movement with what Jack Della Maddelena throws, and he does it with elite power, which is his signature. And this fight, he had to put it on over the course of 5 rounds, someone against Belal Muhammad, who has a gas tank that could go on and on and on, and obviously specializes as a wrestler first. So that was the whole unique dynamic to it. It was whether or not JDM would be able to piece up Belal early and perhaps finish him there, or Belal was going to just be able to drag him to the deep water and kind of keep him on the ground and go from there. But this was interesting because for his first title fight, I mean, you still saw the elite striking and power from JDM early on. It was more or less Belal Muhammad having to weather the storm, and we got to rounds 4 and 5, and that's where Belal wanted to put on the wrestling, and he got a takedown here and there, but nothing was really being done to JDM on the ground. That wasn't going to sway the judges to Belal's side.
I mean, JDM, his takedown defense looked amazing against Belal, and that was, you have to imagine that's like kind of deflating for Belal, because you'd have to think in his game plan he was getting Jack Della Maddelena down, and he really wasn't able to do it. And because of that, he had to show off what he called his Canelo hands on the feet. And, to be fair to Belal, he definitely had his moments. But I think, like you said, for the most of this fight, he was on the back foot there on the feet. And I think just kind of, I mean, when you think about Belal's style, it's kind of tough when he can't get the guy to the ground, because part of the reason why his striking is so good is because the threat of the grappling is always there. And since Jack kind of established pretty early that Bilal wasn't going to be able to get him down so easily, it seemed like the striking for Bilal wasn't as dangerous.
Well, it's just a good base to have for strikers in MMA. You don't ignore the grappling, just be able to defend and get up off your back when whatever it might be. That's really all you have to do. It don't have to turn into a whole jiu-jitsu competition just when you're immediately on the ground, you know. You don't have to pass like crazy or anything. It's just you can still hit someone on the ground too. So, I mean, that's kind of all it took for JDM. And I'm sure a lot of people listening and watching, a lot of fans around the world are very happy that JDM is not only a champion, but because of the guy he beat to take the title away. So
yeah, I feel so bad for Bilal, man, because I don't know, he gets too much hate, especially nowadays too, because he got the championship, and like all the people who are talking crap about him are all these guys who are on like losing streaks, you know. And it just sucks because like they're siding with those guys when Bilal is actually the champ. Well, now he's not, but like you said, probably making some people pretty happy. But I don't know. I keep seeing comments that said we got an exciting Bilal Muhammad fight before GTA 6. And I was like, yeah, we did, didn't we? Like, because, you know, when you think about the expectations with this fight coming in, a lot of people weren't really too sure if it was going to be a good one. You know, compared to the last few pay-per-views, it's a little bit on the weaker side. But, you know, sometimes those ones where your expectations are a little lower, they end up being one of the better ones. In this main event, like I said, you could argue that this was one of the fights of the year, if not fight of the year.
I thought Bilal Muhammad's kickboxing was particularly good when it comes to throwing the leg kicks. You know, not even leg kicks. I mean, he was able to land on the body for JDM, and when JDM would throw a head kick back, he would be able to. He was blocking it really well as well, and that's kind of, you know, at least through the first 3 rounds, why I thought, hey, this fight is a lot more closer than one might have thought going in. Like, it's not going to end in a finish that whether or not Bilal, for instance, taps JDM or JDM knocks out Bilal. Like, you know, these two actually do match up a lot better than someone might have thought. And, that's true.
I'm happy about it, man. Never can be mad when there's an awesome fight. Didn't you say that someone on TikTok thought I looked like JDM? Without the smashed in nose. So, hey, I'm the champ. I should have gotten my UFC belt from our very first video on the channel.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
That's
but
you,
hey,
man.
I'm the champ. But speaking of what's next for the champ, obviously we have to talk about that because this was kind of confirmed during the press conference. And basically, we knew coming in that this fight was going to determine a lot about the future at both 170 pounds and 155 pounds. And it was basically all but confirmed that if JDM won, that would mean that Islam Makhachev will go up to 170 and fight for the title, and then Ilia Topuria will fight Charles Oliveira at UFC 317. If Bilal would have won, we would have gotten Islam versus Topuria. But, you know, JDM's the champ now, and it seems like the next move is that Islam's going up to 170 and trying to get a second belt, because he said he's not vacating the lightweight title if he does it. And that's exciting, man.
Yeah, I think that's fair too. I mean, you know, when it comes to Islam Makhachev and fights that involve another belt on the line, I mean, he was the one defending the belt against Volk. So now he gets the chance to, and good for him. Like, he should get the chance to go and fight for his own, for another belt instead of having to defend the lightweight title against somebody. Well, I mean, obviously Ilya is now officially a lightweight, but, you know, still the principle's kind of the same. Like, I think Islam Makhachev is more than proved. I mean, the pound for pound ranking shows it. The guy, you know, he deserves that kind of next level sort of to add to his career.
Yeah. And we were talking about JDM's takedown defense. Like, if he fights Islam, that takedown defense is definitely going to be tested, especially when Islam's going to be a lot bigger and stronger than he usually is at lightweight. I'm definitely intrigued to see how that fight goes, and I really hope that they make it. It seems like they are. I mean, Dana, he basically said you're not far off when the reporter asked him about that. So I think that we're probably going to get this fight. There's already been some rumblings on social media. JDM wants the fight. He was already talking to Hunter Campbell backstage. Like,
I don't know.
big
That
things are
could be
happening.
a rude awakening for JDM in his now new title reign.
You got to respect it, though. He's not afraid.
I know, for sure.
It's an interesting fight, and we really don't know how Islam's going to match up at 170. I mean, I think he'll be fine, but obviously he's still going up a weight class. He's fighting.
I mean, that is still a very, and then that too. Usually it would be it'd be a guy going up 10 pounds. He's got to go up 15 pounds. So
very true.
I think in terms of just kind of Islam's base when he's in there, I think he holds a very good base to him, and that's part of why he's obviously the wrestler and the grappler that he is. But now you're fighting up a weight class, a lot bigger and whatnot. I think it's gonna really show how strong of a grappler that Islam Makhachev is, and then we'll see if he's able to lock in a submission and get the tap. But I think. I mean, what the encouraging thing is that Jack Della Maddelena showed a lot of promise with his takedown defense, and
this fight could be interesting if it stays on the feet.
Yeah,
because Islam's not a bad striker either. You remember that fight with Dustin Poirier where he had to basically be on the feet for a lot of it, and he was winning those exchanges against a really good striker. But now up a weight class, JDM I'm sure probably hits harder than Dustin Poirier. Obviously, no disrespect to the legend, but it's just logic.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that should be really interesting. So I hope the UFC makes that fight. There's a lot of possible super fights that could be on the horizon, and that kind of makes me want to get into the co-main so we could kind of talk about this other one that's a possibility. What's up, guys? Sorry to interrupt the podcast real quick, but we have a message for you guys.
If you enjoy the Her Hamburg's content, you want to see more, consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a like on the videos, all sorts of fight content as much as possible, podcasts, interviews, vlogs. We have it all over here, so thank you. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you, and like he said, please subscribe. And now, back to the show. So let's hop into this one, man. We got Valentina Shevchenko versus Manon Fiorot for the UFC Women's Flyweight title, and Valentina Shevchenko retains the title, wins by unanimous decision, 48-47 across all three judges' scorecards, and honestly, what was a really close fight. And, may not have been the most exciting fight, but definitely a really technical one and an interesting one, because the first thing that I noticed, and I remember I said this to you while we were watching it, is like Manon looked so big in there. Like, she was clearly bigger than Valentina Shevchenko, and I think that mattered a lot in the grappling exchanges especially. But the thing is, with that with the size comes a tiny bit of a lack of speed, and it seemed like on the feet, Shevchenko was just so much faster than Manon, and I think that's why she was winning a lot of those striking exchanges, and I think it's ultimately why she ended up winning the fight. So it was an interesting one. I think Manon really tested her like more than we've seen in the past. I kind of said to you that I thought Valentina was in a similar spot to Alexander Volkanovski, where like they're both still elite, but they're not quite what they were back in like their original title reigns, but they're still so dangerous and so great. And Valentina gets the win, albeit a very, very close one. But what did you think of this one?
Yeah, I think Valentina Shevchenko just did what she needed to do. I mean, because there's only so much you can do against someone that's bigger than you, first of all, and then.
Were you shocked by that size difference? Because I didn't even really notice it as much during fight week when they were facing off. It was more like when they were in the cage. I'm like, wow, Valentina's like she's really punching up here, and like Manon just looked even like not just longer but like fuller.
Yeah, but I think you still knew that the way that Manon Fiorot was gonna win this fight was still by out-grappling Valentina. I think Shevchenko was just able to mix in a nice dose of striking early. It set up the ground game, and that's all she wrote pretty much. And I think Manon Fiorot showed enough that I think she'll be back for a title shot at some point. That's encouraging, at least.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So.
And plus, you got to think too. She took a lot of damage early with I think like multiple cuts in the first round.
The counter, because Valentina Shevchenko had to counter quite a bit, and that counter right hook is actually a huge weapon for her, and it showed again in this fight. So it kind of set up the rest of the way. And when Alfiero had to dig deep, that's what Valentina Shevchenko brings out of her opponents through 5 rounds. You gotta really find that just that inner champion in you if you want to take that belt from her. So
yeah, and now for her next fight, there's a couple of options. One of which that I think we'll get more into when we get to this fight earlier in the card, which is Natalia Silva. But then the other option is a possible super fight with the strawweight champion Zhang Weili. And that could be a really interesting matchup, especially at 125, because me and you have always talked about how strong Zhang is for 115. And it's kind of similar to Islam Makhachev in a sense. It's like, how does that athleticism and strength go up a weight class? Does it get even better? Or does it kind of even out a little bit? And I think that that's the intrigue with this fight. Because we also have to remember Valentina, before there was the flyweight division, she was fighting at 135. So she's not small, even though she was the smaller woman in this specific fight. I think it could be really interesting to get a super fight. And again, like it's tough because it's always a good time to make a fight like that. Like it'll always sell. Fans will always be into it. But then, like I said, you got Natalia Silva, who I think is clearly now the number one contender at flyweight. And, do you give her that fight first, or do you go maybe in the direction of this super fight? I mean, that's the question that a lot of people are going to be asking, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, it's fair, I think. You got 2 champions who held the belt already, who already had a previous title reign, and now they're on another title reign, and they've essentially already cleared out the division, and now it's like they're doing another lap around it. So it's kind of the perfect time to do it, to be honest, because you don't know how much more you're going to get from the both of them at this point.
I would say more Valentina than Zhang. Zhang, it's more so just because there's not a lot of fresh matchups, but Valentina's like actually getting in her upper 30s. Now she's fighting this new generation. She's not looking quite as dominant as she used to, and you just saw Manon Fiorot had a really good performance against her, even in a loss. So it's just like, how long can Valentina hang on? And that's kind of why I sort of agree with you, like with the argument, maybe we should get this title or the super fight now, because, how much longer do we really have?
But we'll talk about Natalia Silva, because,
yeah,
I thought she had a performance that was worthy of a performance of the night bonus. And,
did you get it? I don't know if you...
I'm not sure, to be honest, but I wouldn't be surprised if she did. To do that to a former champion, I honestly, even though I was way more one-sided, I enjoyed that fight, to be honest, more than this title fight here, and I think that's very encouraging going forward, even if she isn't next in line for a title shot,
Yeah. Want to hop into that one instead of the Zahabi Aldo one? We could always go back to it. I feel like it's a smoother transition anyway.
Might as well, right? I think it makes sense because... who she fought, and Alexa Grasso fought already Valentina Shevchenko multiple times. So, and even then, now unfortunately, even though Alexa Grasso, she fought Valentina 3 times, and now she's on a 3-fight losing streak. It's like, well, you lose to Valentina twice, and now you're at this point where Natalia Silva is a huge budding.
Didn't she? Wait, wasn't the second one a draw though?
Oh, right.
Yeah, so sort of 2.
Draw.
I mean, still,
so it's 2 fights. That's how I look at it, right? If it's a title fight and ends as a draw, and he doesn't take the belt like that.
Yeah, she just kept it.
It's almost like you did.
It's anticlimactic.
So, yeah.
And we don't really get draws in the UFC the way boxing gets them, obviously, because odd number of rounds and all that.
So so that went. Alexa beat Shevchenko first, and then the draw, and then it was the UFC
2 losses.
no-trade card.
So 2 losses, but she hasn't won a fight in a while.
Yeah, and in this fight, I think the matchup was well. It's just Alexa Grasso's point. It's just I think it's a lot more glaring now to see when a fight is on the feet with her, how she clearly wants to engage and wants to throw and wants to. I think she enjoys throwing strikes and stuff and striking with somebody, but it's just that you need that ability to be able to cut off the cage from somebody and keep them. Natalia Silva kind of was just everywhere she wanted to be in this fight. just kind of circling around Alexa every opportunity, and just we already knew about that pressure fighting Muay Thai style that Alexa Grasso incorporates. It's just at a point now where, for one, if you're not going to throw enough, it doesn't really matter, and two, if someone has better footwork than you, then they're going to win more times than not, no matter how much you might be able to hit them. No matter how much harder you might be able to hit them, like, if you don't knock them out, it doesn't matter. So,
and the thing with this fight too, it almost reminded me the way Silva was able to like kind of dance around the cage and just evade every strike it seemed like Grasso was throwing. It kind of reminded me of Ian Gary versus Carlos Prates, and I think Grasso lost for a very similar reason that Prates did. She was pressuring, but like you said, she wasn't cutting off the cage. She wasn't really landing enough to really warrant any respect from Natalia Silva on the feet.
And it's unfortunate because this kind of, well, obviously not this obviously particular performance, but the style still stays the same. It's what won her the title in the first place up until the very end, where she was able to bait Valentina into throwing the wheel kick. She took her back and boom, rear naked choke like it was nothing. So it's just that's kind of what I'm getting at. I think Alexa Grasso obviously still very capable. That's why she's getting this fight, on the main card, all of that. But I think there's got to be a bit of a tweak or whatever. Maybe not so reliant on the Muay Thai and kind of just try to bait somebody into working with her on the ground.
She has really fast hands too. I don't really know why she's always been so adamant on being like a pressure fighter, because I think if she kind of stood her ground a little bit, not necessarily fighting backing up, but just kind of moving side to side a little bit and using that head movement and her good boxing. I'm surprised she doesn't do that more, because I felt like there was a lot more to be desired from her in this fight. And like I said, it just seemed like Silva was able to easily just dance around the outside and just pick her apart as she was coming in.
But Natalia Silva is very exciting. She's very fun, and it's what most certainly what the women's flyweight division is looking for right now.
And Silva's clearly the number one contender, and that's why a fight with Valentina seems so interesting, especially when you look at the co-main of this card and how Valentina looked against Manon. You wonder if Valentina can still keep up with such a fast striker like Silva. I wonder how that fight would go, honestly, because I almost have a feeling that one of them would definitely have to be on the front foot, but you wonder who that might be. But then again, you also have to wonder, is Valentina going to be able to get Silva to the ground easily or not? And if she gets her there, is she going to be able to do well, or is it going to kind of turn into something that happened like in this co-main event where she wasn't able to really keep her there? It's interesting because it really depends on where Valentina is more than anything. If she still has that, she's obviously still elite, but you wonder if this new generation has kind of caught up to her a little bit. And I'd definitely be curious to see that if they don't go in the direction of Zhang Weili and they give this fight to the number one contender, which is now Natalia Silva. But she looked really good against Grasso, so it was cool to see her get that win. But let's talk about the Aldo Zahabi fight, since we skipped it before. And for those who didn't see it, it was a slugfest, honestly. And Zahabi defeated Aldo by unanimous decision. All three judges scored at 29-28. And this was interesting to me, and I kind of want your take on this, because I don't really think we were talking about it much when we watched it live, because the fight was just so fun. But, I thought Aldo clearly won the first. Zahabi won the second, although that was a bit closer. But then round three, that round was nuts, because it starts off, Aldo literally dropped Zahabi twice and lost that round on all three judges' scorecards. But I can't say it's completely unwarranted, because obviously near the end of the fight, Aldo was completely exhausted. Zahabi got him down and hit him with some brutal elbows. Had obviously put a lot of damage on Aldo's face. And so I don't know if I would say it's I wouldn't think it's a bad scorecard at all, but it definitely shocked me that none of the judges gave round three to Aldo, considering, obviously cuts are damage, but 2 knockdowns are pretty big damage too, if you ask me. I don't know. What did you think about that? I'm not even trying to say that Zahabi shouldn't have won. I think this is one of those fights that was so close I wouldn't have cared either way who wins, but it's tough. That third round really had me thinking.
Maybe the The only rationale I can make for that is that Zahabi, who specializes more as a grappler, is just he kept his fight on the feet the entire way. And I mean, you could see how it was honestly, he's got a very kind of awkward standing style to him. He's very herky-jerky with his movement. He'll switch stance for a second, get back into orthodox, or, he's got that. I mean, he's got I think he has a good boxing sense to him.
It's weird 'cause he has like a boxing stance, but he's good with Muay Thai because he throws a lot of kicks too. So it's not just like he has that boxing movement, but then with the kicks.
Part of that makes me think like to just see how well he was able to hang on the feet, and because those first 2 rounds were close. I mean, just for him to weather that flurry that Jose Aldo put on him in the last round.
And that was just brutal. I mean, dude, he got like soccer kicked pretty much.
Yeah,
right when he was getting up, he timed it perfectly.
I mean, you count on Jose Aldo to be the one to finally take advantage of the new rules and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, cool, because I think he kind of got him pretty much like right as he got up, right? And then like, it's tough because, they've obviously changed the rules for what's a grounded opponent. And now you can't really stall as much and keep your hand down like that.
Yeah.
It was definitely really interesting to see that. But I'm honestly... Shout out to Zahabi for not getting finished there, because I think there's a lot of people who would have gotten finished in that situation.
Well, yeah, so I mean that's what it comes down to, is just the judges, they gave Zahabi the first 2 rounds and then Jose Aldo the 3rd round.
Well, no, they gave I've had it up before, but let me put it back. They all gave Zahabi the 3rd round.
Wow.
I think they all had it the exact same way, if I'm not mistaken. But let me just look and make sure. This is bad podcasting as my computer loads.
No, it's worth it though, because it is a very kind of I don't even know the word I'm looking for. Just a conversation that it does kind of make you think.
Yeah. They all gave Aldo round 1, and then they gave Zahabi rounds 2 and 3. All 3 gave them that. So, yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like I'm so shocked that not one judge gave Aldo the 3rd. And I'm not
for these judges especially on this card, like we could just tap into their freaking psyche, make them stand trial or some shit, because it's like, at least for that prelim fight, I just like
we'll get to that. I put it on there.
Yeah, so
because that blew my mind.
I mean, this one too is just his kind of head scratcher. For sure.
Yeah, I thought that it could have gone either way, but I'm definitely shocked that none of those judges gave Aldo round 3, considering he dropped them twice.
Good win for Zahabi, but on the Jose Aldo side of it, it's just unfortunate to see just kind of these string of opponents they've been giving him, kind of, I don't know, just to use him as a stepping stone for them to get to the next level or whatever, but I don't know, it doesn't seem right to me, it's just... We obviously know Jose Aldo's, even though he's back at 45, like he's not gonna be threatening for a title shot the rest of his career. So it's like,
I wish we were getting these legend fights.
Yeah,
like he's fought Jonathan Martinez, Mario Bautista, now Ayman Zahabi, and it's like, why are they using this UFC legend as just, like you said, a stepping stone or a gatekeeper in a sense? I just feel like they've botched his matchup so much in the end, and I feel like there's still more that we could have gotten from Jose Aldo, but with the way that the UFC's been matching him up, he retired, and you wonder how it could have gone if they would have maybe gave him a bit more of generous matchups, with these last few fights. But it is what it is. And that's no disrespect to those fighters either. Like, if they get a Jose Aldo fight, they should take it and do the best they can to get that name on their resume. But to me, it's like, I feel like the UFC is trying to be like, well, this guy beat Jose Aldo, but it's like, he beat Jose Aldo when he was 38 and like kind of on his way. It's just, and that's the sport though, you know what I mean? But it sucks to see them doing that to someone who's a legend of the sport in the way that Jose Aldo is, and he's so beloved too. But at the end of the day, all credit to Ayman Zahabi. He looked really good. Obviously weathered a big storm in the 3rd round, outstruck one of the better strikers in UFC history too, according to all 3 judges. So. Really good win, and I'm curious to see how Ayman builds on that. So it'll be really interesting. And then to end off our talk about the main card, let's talk a little bit about Benoit Saint Denis. But there's honestly not that much to talk about here, just because obviously his original opponent, Joel Alvarez, got injured. and then he had to fight his new opponent on short notice, and he got a very easy submission victory. And as much as we could break down the grappling, there's just no point. Like this is what was expected. BSD was supposed to win this fight in the way that he did, and that's exactly what happened. I'm more willing to talk about maybe what's next, because I was like, I still wouldn't mind seeing that fight versus Alvarez get rebooked. But you have to wonder how long Alvarez would be out, and BSD called out Matus Gamrot because Gamrot was kind of talking a little bit when his fight got scrapped. So definitely curious to see if that fight can get made in the future. Obviously, Gamrot has Ludovic Klein on his hands pretty soon, so if maybe Gamrot gets through him, we have a fight there. So should be interesting. That's all I have to say really on it, though. I don't know if you have anything that you want to add. I mean, obviously BSD, because I don't want to not talk about it, because this guy's one of the better up-and-coming fighters at 155 right now, so I don't know if you had anything.
Well, at least this served as a reminder how versatile of a fighter that Benoit Saint-Denis really is. I think I think he's capable of beating you on the ground. He's capable of beating on the feet, and while he may not, I think it probably is just a product of who he's fought so far. I mean, I think at least who he's fought so far it has been a pretty tough list of names for him. So, I mean, I think it's only gonna get tougher. I think the more he ascends through the lightweight division, and that's a good thing. So we want to keep seeing that versatility from him, and yeah, it's a good thing to have. Not everybody can hang with you on the feet and on the ground as well as he does. So yeah,
he's just one tough dude too. We know that. So definitely intrigued to see how he goes moving forward. But let's talk a little bit about some of these prelims, and then we'll get into one more story. And that will be it for us. But on the prelims, man, there were a few really fun moments and obviously some puzzling ones like we mentioned before. But Mike Malott obviously had that really nice knockout over Charles Radke. What I would say was probably one of the best performances of the card was Jasmine Jasudavicius getting that rear naked choke in the first round over Jessica Andrade. I mean, I've never seen someone run through her quite like that, on the come up like this. So that was really intriguing to see, and I'm definitely curious to see what happens for her moving forward, because that's another person I think could be a title contender soon. And then just the last one, we talked about it before, puzzling scorecards, man, between in the fight with Modestas Bukauskas and Ion Kutelaba. So we've talked about this before with judging, and it never fails to blow my mind how one judge had it 30-27 Bukauskas, and then one judge had it 30-27 Kutelaba. Like, I just don't understand how two judges can watch a fight and see the complete opposite like that. To me, I had it 29-28 Kutelaba, but it was a close fight. I didn't really have it 30-27 either way.
I didn't get a chance to watch the prelims. I just kind of got a synopsis on it, and I saw, obviously, this fight was the talk of the entire thing. But from what I hear, Kutelaba was a lot more active. He was a lot more productive in what he was doing. And at least, you could see he was clearly the more assertive one, trying to win the fight more. And he loses a split decision.
When one of the judges has it with an absurd score. Like, even the 29-28, which was the deciding one, that was for Bukauskas, I could deal with that, because the rounds were close enough. But 30-27 Bukauskas, that was a bit much to me. Like I said, I gave the first two rounds to Kutelaba and then the last round to Bukauskas, so I had it 29-28 Kutelaba. You wonder how this fight maybe would have gone if we had a competent judge instead of a puzzling 30-27 Bukauskas judge. I don't know how. Even DC right after the fight goes, that was terrible. Yeah. That was terrible.
The amount of adjectives that just went through your mind to describe the judge.
Yeah, and ultimately I just land on the scorecard itself, because that really tells you all you need to know. So
it speaks for itself.
Yeah, but the prelims were pretty fun overall, man. I mean, there were a lot of fun fights. Obviously, like I said, we had two great performances too from rising stars in Mike Malott and Jasmine Jasudavicius, getting big wins, big finishes right in front of their home crowd. This card, I think, was a lot more fun than we initially thought it was going to be. And that's, like I said, getting your expectations kind of blown away is always a good thing, especially in this sport. So, before we go, though, there was one last thing that happened on the card that I did actually want to talk about a tiny bit because I've been seeing some debate about it online. But we saw last night that Vitor Belfort has been inducted or will be inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. And, Belfort getting into the Hall of Fame, obviously when you look at his resume, much deserved, but the debate is kind of talking about whether he deserves the glory because if you think about the whole shift to USADA being in the UFC, Vitor Belfort is one of the poster childs for fighters who kind of melted once USADA came around. And, he had some great moments. And then obviously, Joe Rogan always calls him TRT Vitor in those days when he was in his 30s and he just brutally knocked out Michael Bisping. Obviously is the reason why Bisping is blind in his one eye. Knocked out Luke Rockhold. And, you think about even just besides that, like just some of this guy's achievements. I mean, the way that he knocked out Wanderlei Silva back in the old days in the UFC. He's knocked out a lot of UFC legends from that old era. But then even in a fight that he lost against John Jones, I mean, I think he came as close to as anybody has to finishing John Jones with that armbar. I mean, John's arm was facing the opposite direction, and he's just a savage and didn't tap, and Vitor just let go of it after a while. So it's just, his career and his resume speaks for itself, but you have to wonder how much the steroid debate goes into it. And in my opinion, I don't know. I think it's naive to think that a lot of UFC fighters weren't doing steroids in that era and even before that. So to me, it doesn't really take him out of it. This isn't like baseball, although you could argue that it should be because this is a lot more dangerous. But at the same time, I'm sure there's plenty other UFC Hall of Famers who are like people who have taken steroids in the past. So it's just kind of like you can't really just knock Vitor because his is the most obvious case. That's just my personal opinion on it. But I can't say I don't understand some of the outrage that I've seen from some of the fans and maybe Michael Bisping too. I don't know. I don't know if he's commented yet about it. I know Bisping's probably pissed, hey, you can't. I mean, how could you blame him? But yeah, I don't know. That's just my opinion on it, though. What do you think of it?
No, I'm in agreement for sure. Just back then in those days, it was just a lot. It was not so much technique, precision, all that like it is nowadays. It's always been a mental game, but definitely the physicality back then was so much more prominent. And just with guys. Um, Guys are just naturally a lot more ruthless. It's not the sport itself isn't so widely accepted as it is, and getting all these deals and stuff like it was kind of like that's why it was regarded the way it was when UFC was just getting off its feet. Like it was just very hard for people to accept and get into, and
because of that, there weren't even really a lot of rules back then. I mean, we were laughing.
All that.
Remember, we were laughing yesterday because we were watching the highlight reel, which, by the way, Vitor Belfort's highlight reel is insane, as we all know. But the knockout over Wanderlei Silva, that was back in the day where you could wear shoes. You had the option to wear shoes, but if you wore the shoes, you weren't allowed to kick. And so Vitor was like, all right, I'll wear the shoes, and he knocked him out, obviously, with just punches. So it's just, it was a different era, you're right, and it's a lot more just grit. And, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, in my opinion, if you have a problem with Vitor being in the Hall of Fame for being on, because he's on steroids, you have to take a look at a lot of those fighters.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
So that's why the physicality part of it so much more prominent back then, and why PEDs would, nowadays it's,
well, it's just a different era. I mean, like you said, back. When you think about the UFC back then, it was more marketed towards like the no holes bars like type crowd, and because of that, like the rules just weren't that strict. I mean, we think of a guy like the legend Mark Coleman, like one of his biggest moves before they banned it was headbutting people. Like that's the era that Vitor kind of came up in, and you're right. A lot of those guys were probably on roids, and just. You kind of had to be. I mean, it was such a brutal sport back then. You could get injured in so many different ways. I think they've kind of I don't know if the rules are perfect nowadays, but they're as close to perfect as we could really get. Maybe, besides eye pokes, my thoughts on that. But compared to the old Wild West days of the UFC, it's definitely a lot different. But like I said, you just can't have double standards. If you're mad at Vitor for doing steroids because he's the obvious poster child of it, you got to be mad at some of those other people who are in the Hall of Fame too. So that's just my take, and it seems like we're pretty much kind of in agreement for similar reasons. But yeah, overall, really fun event. Next week, not quite a pay-per-view. We're in the UFC Apex. I can't be that mad about it. We've been going on the road a lot more for the UFC, which has been good, but we still have these Apex events every so often. But I'm happy with this main event, man. Gilbert Burns versus Michael Morales. That'll be a really fun one. Morales is definitely an interesting up-and-comer at 170, and I'm curious to see if he can get past the always stiff test that's Gilbert Burns. That's a fun one. And we'll see if Morales is able to arrive, and we'll be back to talk about it next week. So
feels just like a superstar. Doing all these drugs, I don't think I'm gonna see tomorrow. Living fast, brand new dash up in a foreign car. This the type of shit that you